Jamil Zainasheff joins me this week to discuss craft beer, homebrewing, and innovation in beer. This is BeerSmith Podcast number 306. This is BeerSmith Podcast number 306, and it's late June 2024. Jamil Zainasheff joins me this week to discuss craft beer, homebrewing, and beer innovation. Thank you to this week's sponsors, Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine. They've recently launched an all-new experience called Craft Spirits and Distilling. If you make or love spirits, check out spiritsanddistilling.com for recipes, how-to videos, their Spirits and Distilling podcast, and much more. Again, that new site is spiritsanddistilling.com. And BeerSmith Web, the online version of BeerSmith brewing software. BeerSmith for the web lets you design great beer recipes from any browser, including your tablet or phone. Edit recipes on the go with access to the same full suite of recipe building tools as our desktop version. Try BeerSmith Web today by creating a free account at beersmithrecipes.com. And finally, a reminder to click that like and subscribe button on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, or whatever platform you're listening on. Clicking those buttons is a great way to support the show. And now let's jump into this week's episode. Today in the show, I welcome back Jamil Zainasheff. Jamil's an award-winning professional and homebrewer. He authored the books Brewing Classic Styles, The Practical Guide to Beer Fermentation, and he's co-host of Brew Strong, the podcast on Brewing Network. Jamil, it's great to have you back on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Rad.
Always a pleasure. It's great to have you. I know you've retired now from professional brewing, but what projects have you been up to lately?
The most recent thing is I just completed the text for a book called Modern Homebrewing with a friend of mine in England, Andy Parker of Elusive Brewing Company. So we've got this book that talks about all the modern technologies and ways to improve your brewing, and has about 40 recipes, 30 to 40 recipes from a lot of our favorite breweries around the world. Should be published end of August, should be available end of August, beginning of September.
No kidding. That's pretty quick for publication. You said you just finished the text?
Yeah. They have dedicated editors there at Camera in England as the publisher.
Sure.
So they'll turn around. It's supposed to be full color throughout, and I think we're doing a book release party and book signing in England. I think it's going to be September 14th, maybe. I'll be there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, should be fun.
That's great. Yeah. Well, tell us a little more about the book. Is it cover a lot of the newer stuff, like the newer equipment people are working with, the all-in-one systems and so on?
Yes, absolutely. The all-in-one systems, and everything. It kind of covers, equipment as basic as a hydrometer and, tricks for using it, adjusting it, things like that. And, everything. We try and cover everything. And one of the main focuses is, how to brew certain styles of beer. For example, hazy beers. How do you brew a great hazy beer? How do you brew a great high alcohol beer? How do you brew, a no alcohol beer? Everything from one to the other. Kind of go through the processes and the ideal way to make those beers.
So I assume you're diving into like a lot of the new hop techniques, for example, right?
Yes. So we'll cover a lot of the new hop products and ways to make highly hop beers as well.
Well, that's great. Nobody's done a full-blown homebrewing book in the last couple of years, at least. So I hope this goes well for you.
Yeah, we're excited. I think there's a lot of good material in there, and that people will get, a good kick out of this book. Yeah.
Awesome. I wanted to move on to some of the topics for today. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the industry. One of the significant changes we've seen in the last year has been a bit of a slowdown in craft brewing. I think we're up to, I read an article yesterday, it said 9,700 breweries roughly, but they're still chasing about 12% of the beer market by volume. And it's like a quarter, 25% maybe by dollars. Was a slowdown perhaps inevitable? Did we overbuild perhaps in the craft breweries here in the United States?
Yeah, I think anytime something is popular, more and more people jump in. People jump on the bandwagon, and it's just going to, um, impact everybody's share of the pie. They were thinking that the pie could grow infinitely, and eventually craft beer would be 100% of the market. But the big brewers, fought back with some very clever methods. One by buying up some craft brewers, and two by spending heavily on marketing and distribution, which they're really good at. One of the things I tell people that want to open a brewery is it's not necessarily about the quality of beer. It is really about marketing and selling beer. That's what the beer industry is. Especially if you're a craft brewer, it's harder to do, and that's the thing. You have to be able to fight that battle, and doesn't matter how great beer is. You have to be trendy, you have to be cool, all that stuff. That's what sells beer. So
yeah, I remember a couple of years ago, the Brewers Association had a goal. I think it was 20% of the market, and it looks like instead we've got 9,700 breweries chasing like 12% of the market.
Yeah, and what happened is the big brewers, they bought up some craft brewers, and then they started making kind of a mass market product out of IPAs and things like that. And so when it's when it becomes that mass market, and they were doing okay. Some of the like Elysian and 10 barrel and all that. They're brewing at 1,000 barrels at a time. The 10 barrel beers here in Fairfield, not far from me.
Yeah,
and they were doing a pretty good job. Some of those beers, they're pretty solid product when it comes down to it. So I think that really ate away, and there's no indication to the consumer. I mean, we know, big brewers, we know in what we define as craft brewers, we know all about that, right? But the majority of consumers have zero idea. They're there to buy an IPA. Does that IPA taste good? Yeah, that's good. All right. Can I find it, here, there, everywhere I go? Yeah, all right. I'll just drink that.
Yeah, I had Keith V on a few weeks back, and he of course founded Blue Moon, which was one of the first craft beers, if you will, founded at a big brewery. And at the time, he was competing against Zima. This was back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting, like you said, a consumer doesn't necessarily know the difference between, say, Blue Moon and another wit made by a small brewer, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, we're also seeing large brewers actually start to divest themselves of some of their big dollar craft brewery acquisitions. I know they were making some $1 billion purchases just a few years back. And then we're also seeing closures like Anchor, which was previously acquired by Sapporo. Mm-hmm. Are the big breweries also starting to adjust to the new realities in the craft beer market?
Yeah, and part of the struggle for craft beer is that people now are moving on to craft cocktails. So, back in the day, beer was the only thing that had the creativity. You could, or was talking about the creativity and talking about craft. It existed in these other products, but they weren't talking about it. Beer became successful, convincing people that if you want a new, wonderful experience, you got to come drink craft beer. And so that's, we got that influx of people that wanted, new, interesting experiences, that were trendy. Some people went for trends, some people went for flavor, but, we got a lot of them in beer. And then, because beer, you could add, any flavor to, you could make it look almost like anything. Well, the spirits people finally, wine is kind of really restricted. There's not That's why wine kind of struggles growing its market. Whereas, in spirits, they realized, hey, we can do this too, and we're unlimited. You can make anything with a cocktail, right? You can put anything in there that is food safe. You could make it any color, any texture, any flavor you want. And then the alcohol is just carried by, vodka or whatever else. So they became really aware of that and started putting quite a bit of effort in that. And now the trend is to drink cocktails. So, people are only going to drink so much. And, now they're focusing more and more on the craft cocktails. So that's where the market's going. And that's, if you're opening something, open a craft, distillery with a restaurant. That's your trick.
Yeah, and those are also making their way into the packaged environment as well, right? There's a lot of prepackaged vodka mixed drinks that seem to be very, very popular now.
Yeah, we did it at Heretic. And I wanted to start it, about eight years ago. I saw this trend happening in the market, and it was difficult because it's difficult making people do anything new. 17. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Got to mute my phone. So, eventually, maybe 6 years ago, we started down the cocktail road, and it was growing rapidly. And I told everybody, when I sold the business, I said, look, in the next 2 years, if you focus on the cocktails, you will make more money, your margins will improve, and you can, double your revenue. But they decided I didn't know what I was talking about and kind of ignored that. The cocktails still do well for them, but they didn't pursue building up, more cocktails sales.
So do you think the cocktail thing's going to be a little bit of a trend here, like a temporary trend, kind of like, I'm thinking like wine coolers, because when I drink a lot of these cocktails that are prepackaged, I think of kind of like a wine cooler.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it'll do better than that.
Yeah.
And the reason is it appeals to a broader swath of society. One of the cool things you can do very easily with craft cocktails is you can make a non-alcoholic craft cocktail. It's expensive in beer to make them, whereas it's cheaper in cocktails to make them.
Mm-hmm.
You're leaving out the alcohol, the most expensive part for a lot of the cocktails. Well, actually, in craft cocktails, canned cocktails, the most expensive thing is all the flavors that go into them if they use real fruit and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think it'll last. I think people are interested in cocktails. There's more flavors to explore. There's more colors. There's more textures. You look very cool holding up a glass of cocktail with very pretty colors and things like that. Versus beer is becoming kind of passé. So I think the cocktails are definitely here to stay. And they're growing rapidly.
Mm-hmm. Well, at the same time, with some 9,700 breweries, there seems to be a craft brewery on almost every corner. And craft beer really has entrenched itself into the American culture. What was a rarity maybe 20 years ago is now very much every day. And on the weekends, at least, a lot of the craft breweries I've been to are still packed. What do you think some of the lasting impacts of the craft beer revolution really are?
Yeah, that's hard to say. But I think, at least for some people, it awakened in them an appreciation for flavor, and that something from a small producer can be quite good and can be interesting and more interesting than the mass market stuff. So we had bread had become in a cellophane wrapper, sliced and bleached to no end, and then people started finding artisan breads, and that changed the the bread aisle in the supermarket. And I think people, for a while there, we, especially in the U.S., we had industrialized everything, and things became more sanitized and more you know, more standardized and sanitized and standardized and simplified in a way. And I think people, this is kind of a backlash of it. People want to experience something that isn't so sanitized, simplified, and standardized. They want a little bit of a rougher experience or a little different experience. They want to have a chance to, taste a beer and go, oh, wow, I didn't expect those flavors. And I think that's carrying over into more of people's lives now.
Hasn't it also kind of revitalized the corner pub, if you will? I don't know if you probably remember in the 80s, it was, the pubs were more like a seedy place that they weren't as trendy.
Yeah.
They weren't cool places to go, if you will.
Yeah.
And now, like I said, almost every corner has a very nice craft brewery there where you can sit down and enjoy a beer and maybe a meal and kind of have a little bit of a social event.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I think, it's kind of, change the impression of day drinking or whatever. You can, you can say, yeah, I'm going down to the brewery or the pub, and you want to go or you want to meet me or whatever, and it's okay. It's all right to go sit in a pub, a craft beer bar, and read a book and have a beer. It's not frowned upon like it would be if you went into one of those seedy bars. You're like, what are you doing in there at 2:00 in the afternoon? It's like, nowadays you take your laptop and you're like, yeah, I'm working from the pub.
I mean, some of these farmhouse breweries are absolutely amazing too. The locations, it's almost like going to, like a winery out in the country kind of a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of those are really, really amazing. Takes a lot of money. And people have built some amazing things.
Yeah. Well, switching over to the homebrewing side, we're seeing sort of a continued decline that started, unfortunately, some 10 years ago and perhaps accentuated by the cancellation of HomebrewCon this year. I wanted to get your thoughts on where's homebrew going?
Yeah, I don't know. It's I don't think it's ever going away. But, in the past, it had its ebbs and flows. I think one of the things suppressing homebrewing is what you mentioned earlier. There's 9,700 craft breweries. You really don't have to go far to get some, craft beer.
Yeah.
Now, it's super easy. I think there was a little boost there during the pandemic, but I don't know. It's just so easy to go get pints. I think people, can go and experience that creativity and adventurous taste. I have 500 breweries within a short drive of where I'm at. It's crazy. It's just tons of breweries. So me and my friends will schedule an afternoon where we get dropped off and then we wander around, on foot to 10, 15 pubs.
Wow.
And then get picked up again. And it's like, wow, we didn't have to still homebrew every once in a while, but nothing near like, you needed. So, and, all the grocery stores carry a pretty wide selection. And then you have Bevmo and Total Wine. And, it's like your choices are just, exponential from what it was when homebrewing was at its peak. But, again, homebrewing is not going away. And it is one of the, there's a joy to it. And I think, social media, people being on their phones 8 hours a day, really has cut into that time.
Yeah, I would say hobbies in general are probably in decline because people spend so much time on the little screen, right?
Yeah, Absolutely. You're 100% right there.
And then, COVID, I think, did some damage too, because we used to get together and brew maybe a big batch,
Mm-hmm.
like
Right.
in the garage, and the neighbors would come over and we'd have, drink some beer, and we'd, have maybe brew a 10 or a 20-gallon batch. And now, post-COVID, people seem to have reverted to these small all-in-one systems, kind of doing it by themselves instead. So it's become less of a social event.
Even then, just drinking beer together, that's kind of been cut into. And, I have COVID right now.
Yeah, you mentioned you were a little under the weather. And appreciate you coming on anyways.
But, but still, the last 2 days, friends came over and, we sat 10 feet apart and we still had some beers and chatted. Sat in the garage with the doors open so the wind was coming through. There's a way to make it happen if you really want to.
Yeah.
So I think it'll decline, but eventually it'll go back up. If they legalize home distilling, which people are trying to get done, once that happens, I think you'll see a new surge in home brewing and home distilling, because in order to distill, you have to make beer essentially first, and you'll see a big uptick at that point.
Yeah, there's certainly been a lot of interest in distilling. Of course, unfortunately, in the U.S., it's still illegal, at least officially, right?
There's some states that have legalized it.
Oh, really? I did not know that. I thought it was still illegal at the federal level. But
Right. I thought so too. But apparently some states have legalized it. And, we'll see what happens. I think it's with some effort in the next, 5 years or so, you'll see home distilling really take off. That's the place to be positioned. You'll have to add some stuff to BeerSmith for distilling.
I've been thinking about it already. Yeah.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's perhaps one of the best times to be a home brewer. We have access to, stainless steel all-in-one systems. We have fresh ingredients. We can get the same ingredients as the professionals can. And of course, we have a base of knowledge that wasn't even remotely available 10 years ago. What do you see as some of the advantages as a home brewer now? I know you just finished your book.
Yeah. The greatest thing is the wealth of information that's out there. Podcasts like yours, tools like yours, like BeerSmith, and all the other, wealth of ingredients as well. But that information and how to take some of the greatest ingredients in the world and put them together. When I started homebrewing, we were really limited in what we could get, what we could use, and today it is just crazy with the amount of choices, yeasts especially. There's such a selection of yeasts, even genetically modified yeasts as well, that'll produce all sorts of flavors that you want. And same thing for the hop products. They're doing everything. They're deconstructing hops and putting them back together in ways, where you have these ingredients that you just pour in to make this, insanely hoppy beer.
Well, and the hop knowledge has just gone insane, gone vertical because of the IPA revolution, right?
Right. Biotransformation and other things that we're studying. And, really, really has changed the landscape there. There was times when you had to just kind of make do with whatever ingredient you could find. And, you could still make great beer, but now, the world's, ingredients are available to you. It's shocking. And they're coming out with new things like, I don't know if you know, Blue Lake Farms. They, I think they're in Wisconsin. They make a hop product that is essentially wet hops and available year round. And so
I actually interviewed them a couple of years back talking about the Blue Lake hops and the process they use. I think they quickly freeze it, right? Snap freeze it?
Yeah, so it doesn't rot, doesn't turn slimy or anything like that. If you've ever done a a fresh hop or wet hop beer, you be you get the hops, and if you don't in a day or two, pardon me, they turn slimy,
Yeah.
and you can't use them.
Fresh
And
hops. Yeah.
they've come up with a system where you can do that year round. As a matter of fact, I've got some in my freezer right now that I'm going to do. They sent me some German varieties as well. I'm going to do a wet hop, Pilsner. I think would be delicious.
Yeah, so I mean, even though there's fewer homebrewers, we're definitely in a situation where it's probably the best time ever to be a homebrewer, right?
Absolutely, I think you're right there.
Yeah. Well, homebrewing clubs also took a bit of a hit during COVID, but I've at least the ones that I've been to have been enjoying a bit of a resurgence now. The homebrew clubs are starting to see their attendance come back up, and what do you think about the homebrew club environment, and how can we create opportunities for growth through the clubs?
Yeah, I think clubs in general will, when they come back, homebrewing will really start to accelerate again, because it's that excitement of sharing the beers that you make and the knowledge that you have that is really a cornerstone of the hobby. And like you're saying, the pandemic kind of knocked clubs down a bit. Well, that you know that in and of itself was one of the reasons that homebrewing took a hit. Um, but I think clubs, if they focus on the sharing aspect of beer, I think that really tends to bring more people in than anything. Club events where you get some of the public involved. People see you having fun. People see you sharing and learning and creating things. They want to be a part of that, and I think that is something that clubs can do that really make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little pessimistic for a while, but like I said, this is all anecdotal. But the last couple of times I've been out to speak at some of the local clubs, the attendance has been picking up, and people have been they stay after for a long time. They share their beers. They have a great time.
Yeah, people like homebrewing and people like clubs because it gives them a friend group. It's you become part of a community. And people love that. One of the reasons people go to social media is because it makes them feel more like part of a community. They add friends and they see what the friends are doing and they talk about what they're doing. They want to do that. That is like a human need. And that's why people are spending 8 hours a day on their phones looking at social media. They want to be part of that. Well, if you could substitute that for them with a real experience, real human contact, real chances to interact and to learn and to share with homebrewing in a club, they'll start to take that. They'll realize that the small screen does not truly give you that experience that they're
not the same level of satisfaction, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something about human contact and sharing something face to face that's really really wonderful.
Well, and I think it's kind of the center of homebrewing. Like I said, we used to get together to brew a lot more, and then of course share the beer afterwards. It was a whole experience, and I think some of that's coming back. And I'm actually in the optimistic category here.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. Well, what advice do you have for folks looking to get friends and family involved in homebrewing as a hobby?
Just kind of that same way. Sharing. Share the beer. Talk about it. Talk about how you came up with the recipe or what your your thought process was. Even if it's like, well, I got it from I bought it from more beer. That's good. That sounds like a beer I like. and then talk about the process, and then invite them to join you. Just say, yeah, hang out with me while I brew. Next time. You don't necessarily have to do anything. I'll do everything, and you can just watch. Or once they're there, you're like, hey, throw in the hops, smell these, taste this, if malt, even you're brewing with malt extract, taste this malt extract. That's the taste of beer before it's fermented. Things like that. Teach them about the yeast. You kind of get them excited about the process and what you're doing. And I think that a lot of people will join in at that point. They'll want to see it. They'll want to experience it.
Well, homebrewing has been a driver in craft beer innovation, and a lot of the big innovations, including a lot of the styles, came from homebrewing. And of course, you started out as a homebrewer yourself. Mm-hmm. Do you think homebrewing is really going to continue to be an innovation engine for beer?
Absolutely. The risks when you're homebrewing are really small, and so you have a chance to be really creative and try different things. And I think it's one of the greatest opportunities to be creative and show how creative you are. And so people will continue to do that. There's a lot of interesting people that are very clever and creative that trend towards homebrewing, and I think that they'll continue to be an inspiration for commercial brewers everywhere.
Well, talking about innovation, IPAs, of course, have started to peak, I would argue, even though they're, 50% of the craft beer market or whatever. I think we're starting to see some new styles pop up in the popular area. What do you think might be some of the new innovations or styles we might see outside of IPAs?
Outside of IPAs, I think IPAs are still like a huge part of the market.
There's no doubt. They're still 50% of the market, but
and I think people will come up with some clever ways to make more things called IPA, because the name is what drags people to it. Like I said earlier, the big commercial brewers, they've got IPAs that people go, yeah, I'll take an IPA. I remember the first time I heard in a movie somebody come up and order a beer at a bar. They were just like, yeah, give me an IPA. It used to be give me a beer. Now it's become give me an IPA. Now, I knew at that point, I'm like, wow, craft beer's really made it. It's changed social consciousness. As far as new beers, I think you might see innovations in lagers of some kind. You might see innovations in the very low and no alcohol area. That's something that has been discussed for some time in the beer world and never really came to pass. But now every brewery's making a lager. Big portion of them are terrible, but they're all making lagers. Hopefully they'll learn how.
There's some really good ones out there too, but yeah,
there are. But it's unfortunate the majority are not doing that great. You taste a lot of acetaldehyde. You taste a lot of poorly fermented lagers out there. And people are like, no, my lager sells. It's like, yeah, because the consumers buy them. Like I said, it's not high quality beer that sells beer. It's marketing and names and things like that. So I think you'll see some innovations there. I think the low alcohol thing. It's a struggle for beer producers to do it because of generally the costs involved in making even a non-alcoholic IPA. The costs are the hops and the labor. It's not the production of alcohol that's a huge cost. So once brewers get a way of making full flavored non-alcoholic beers that are as creative as some of the other beers they do, you'll see that continue to spike up.
Yeah, we're seeing certainly seeing some better beers come out. Particularly, I've enjoyed some of the ones that have come out with some of the unique yeast strains, using some of these low alcohol yeast strains.
Mm-hmm.
They actually, taste like beer, which is pretty cool. Uh,
Right.
so, I mean, and then there's a number of other processes. People are always developing new processes for doing non-alcoholic beers, but or
Mm-hmm.
low alcohol beers. So I do think that's a growing part of the market as well. I'm not sure
Right.
that's ever going to displace real beer, but it
No,
is interesting.
you'll see it grow, and I think they'll get to a point where uh, if you're not experienced in tasting beer, the average consumer might go, "Wow, I can't tell the difference. I don't know that something's alcoholic or not."
Yeah.
And at that point, you'll see quite a bit. Now, the fact of the matter is, people drink beer and other alcoholic beverages to get drunk. To have a mood altering thing. Whether it's just to have one and to relax a little bit, or to have 10 and get hammered. People like the effects of alcohol.
Yeah.
So I don't think, non-alcoholic beer will really replace, the alcohol in beer, but it'll give people, kind of an option for the times when they have a hankering for a beer, but they can't have the mood altering.
Mm-hmm. Well, along the lines we've been discussing, have you had any particularly innovative or memorable beers in the last year that really just wow, this is really amazing?
Wow, yeah. That's really hard to say. I've been, and I'm sure, I'm probably leaving some people out, but, um, I've been focused a lot on uh, studying and experiencing some of the really traditional beer styles. So I did a whole thing on, the alt beers in Dusseldorf, and I spent many trips and many days just drinking alt beer. And man, that's just a world class experience. If everybody should get themselves to Dusseldorf and
Yeah.
stagger around those pubs. And then I just did another trip to Germany where for Stark Beer Fest. Everybody's heard of Oktoberfest, but very few people have heard of Stark Beer Fest, which has been going longer than Oktoberfest by hundreds of years. And that's where all the Doppelbocks are released.
Wow.
And so I went to the fests surrounding that and drank a lot of Doppelbock, which was wonderful. I mean, mind blowing. Having a liter of Ondeck's Doppelbock at the monastery. It's just an incredible experience. I went with some good friends of mine that own and brew at Attaboy Brewing in Frederick, Maryland. They came out and joined me for the trip. And that was really cool to have them there. I love those guys. Steve and Brian came out and hung out. And then, I had a couple of beers in Iceland.
Really?
Yeah, in a little town called Vik. There was a little craft beer brewery there. Sat down with the owner and enjoyed, his full lineup of beers, and that was really cool to, just hang out and try, essentially American style craft beers in Iceland. And spent a lot of time in England, visiting the the classic family brewers, such as
Nice.
Hook Norton and Batham's.
Mm-hmm.
I went to also Bateman's, which is different than Batham's. I went to, I've been to Timothy Taylor's, Theakston's, Holden's, the Beacon Hotel where they make the Sarah Ruby Mild. So I've been focused on visiting all of these and talking with the brewers and experiencing them before they're gone. They're under a lot of risk, but they make some amazing beers. So I'm going to do an article or two about that as well.
I was going to say, are you researching another book, doing all the travel, or?
Yeah, I love traveling and visiting these breweries, and especially when friends can join me, it's a blast. And then I like you know for all the my experience drinking these beers in the past, a lot of it was a little more rushed. It was like, yeah, all right. So I've drank these. I know these. I'm, developing a recipe. Now I really want to, um, experience the brewery and experience the feel and the wonder that comes with it and the history. I want to kind of, steep myself in that and really get a deeper understanding of making these beers. So I've been doing that. Harvey's and Fuller's used to be one of them as well. So I'm really enjoying that aspect. And then just writing about it is just a way to share that information with more people. And I enjoy the writing.
That's awesome. Well, I know you've taken up some home brewing since you left Pro Brewing. What are some of the things you've been brewing? What are some of the styles you've been making?
Oh, again, it's been, I did, when I started homebrewing again, I got a Brewzilla from Chris at More Beer. They had one with a little dent in it, tiniest little dent. They're like, oh, we can't sell this. It's new, so here you go. And I, so the first beer back was an ordinary bitter, British bitter. And then I did probably 5 more bitters. I have a friend who built a British pub in his garage. I mean, it's very, very authentic British pub in his garage. And so I put my beer engine over there, and I'll fill a pin, and then we'll let our friends know, hey, we're going to tap into the pin, and we go and drink this beer, and in a few hours it's gone. So it only lasts a few hours, and people are like, oh, I missed it. So I've been doing that, and then did a couple of lagers, German lagers. Did Oktoberfest kind of beer, Märzen, and then we did a couple other lagers, and we did double decoction. My friend had never done a decoction, so he's like, "Oh, I've always wanted to do this. It's so complex and difficult." I'm like, "No, it's super easy. Just grab a pot, scoop some of the mash out, throw it in another kettle, boil it for 15 minutes, throw it back in, mix it in. That's it." You need to figure out how much.
Yeah.
I gotta mention, BeerSmith has how much decoction mash to pull.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
does.
So just use BeerSmith.
There you go.
And I'm pretty sure I mentioned BeerSmith in the new Modern Homebrewing book. I think it's a great
appreciate
tool.
that. Thank you. Yeah.
But yeah, you just pull it out just scoop it out. The thicker part. You don't have to worry about.
That's right.
Yeah. You boil it 15 minutes, mix it back in. You're at your next rest temperature.
There you go.
And then you do it again, and you double decoction. You can triple decoct. You can decoct however much you want.
Just takes a little extra time, obviously, but
yeah, makes the brew day a little longer, but not much, and it's fun. It's cool. You're using something historic that a lot of brewers haven't used for or a lot of brewers haven't ever experienced.
Yeah.
And depending on your thinking, how much that really gains you versus different ingredients, it's fun. So I encourage people to do that. And then I think I made just a nice, really hoppy pale ale, using some new hop products as well. So
nice.
A little variety of things. But I love the British beers and the fermentation flavor that's dry for them. I've been experimenting a lot with open fermentation. The Dusseldorf alt beers are all open fermented as well.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And that lends itself a certain character. I had brewed alt beer using the White Labs alt beer strains in the past, and got good flavor, and won awards with it and all that. But it never really seemed exactly to me, like the alt beers that I had when I was in Dusseldorf. And so now going back, and I'm just like, all right, so, here's more temperature information. Here's, they're open fermenting, which I never realized.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't decoction. It's the open fermentation. So I started open fermenting the alt beer. I brewed alt beers here for the article that I wrote for Brew Your Own magazine. And open fermentation made all the difference in the world. The flavor was there finally, and using the same yeast. It's open fermentation makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And people say, "Well, there's no pressure on it." It's like, yeah, that's one thing, but the CO2 sitting over the top of it increases the dissolved CO2 in the solution. So you actually have to kind of vent that off, and it makes a big difference.
Nice. Well, Jamil, we're coming up near the end of the time. I wanted to ask your closing thoughts on homebrewing and craft brewing, the state of homebrewing and the state of craft brewing, and any advice you have, perhaps from your new book.
Well, as far as making great beer, homebrewing or craft brewing, the trick is to do a lot of it. Homebrew more. If you want to improve your homebrewing, brew more frequently. Try to replicate what you're doing. Try and tweak what you're doing. The more you do it, the more comfortable you'll be with it. The more you'll be able to do the steps without struggle. And once you do that, you can improve your beer, and your beer will do far better. So keep brewing. Brew as much as possible. Don't worry if a beer doesn't turn out. You'll get better. You get better with practice. It's like playing music. Do you just pick up a guitar every once in a while that you want to hear a song? Play it? No. You play guitar over and over. You play songs over and over. And that's how you get good. Same thing for brewing. And, don't worry about the homebrew community and whether homebrew is on the upswing and downswing. Don't let that bother you. Same thing for craft brewing. Just keep brewing. Keep enjoying great beer. Keep sharing with other people. And if you share it and you instill in them your enthusiasm for homebrewing, homebrewing will grow and it'll do better. You'll get more out of it. One of the greatest joys I get from homebrewing is sharing things that I've learned with other homebrewers, helping out. I just love that aspect of it. Especially new homebrewers come in and they're struggling. Share that information. It'll make them better homebrewers. You'll have a good time with it. You'll feel good when that person's making their beers have improved and they share a better beer with you. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, as I mentioned, Jamil, I think I'm on the optimistic side. I think we may actually start turning the corner again soon. And I don't have any strong basis for that. Most of it's anecdotal, but I think we may see a growth again soon.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Like I said, it's never going away. It's gonna be there for a long time. And I think like anything, it has its ebbs and flows, but it's gonna pick up. It's gonna do better. Just keep take advantage of all the wonderful ingredients you have. Take advantage of all the wonderful equipment. Now's the time to be a home brewer.
Yeah, the best time to be a home brewer.
Mm-hmm.
My guest today was Jamil Zainasheff, author of Brewing Classic Styles and The Practical Guide to Fermentation. And I want to thank you once again, Jamil. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I always enjoy chatting with you.
A pleasure. Thanks again, Jamil.
Take care.
A big thank you to Jamil Zainasheff for joining me this week. Thanks also to Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine. They recently launched an all-new experience, Craft Spirits and Distilling. If you make or love spirits, check out spiritsanddistilling.com for recipes, how-to videos, their Spirits and Distilling podcast, and much more. That new site is spiritsanddistilling.com. And also BeerSmith Web, the online version of BeerSmith brewing software. BeerSmith for the web lets you design great beer recipes from any browser, including your tablet or phone. Edit recipes on the go with access to the same full suite of recipe building tools as our desktop version. Try BeerSmith Web today by creating a free account at beersmithrecipes.com. And finally, a reminder to click that like and subscribe button on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, or whatever platform you're listening on. Clicking those buttons is a great way to support the show. I'd like to thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great brewing week.